missed it actually. I thought of recording, but then later I thought it may not be required because it's not a normal session. No? Probably we should have done it from the beginning anyway. So what is gone is gone. So so yeah. So what is the real identity of the living entity is that the living entity, is not a body. So if somebody asks, generally we say that people who are not aware of the spiritual nature of the living entity, they say that I am so and so person, right? I am X Y Z, and then my father is this. I am working here. These are our identities on a material level. But the real identity is not material. We are actually the soul which is within the body. So I am not the body, but I am within the body, right? The body. So we discussed about it, right? The soul actually is a pure. It is a part and parcel of Krishna, right? As per the scriptures, Lord has expanded into various form. We are actually his pleasure potency. In sense, we all the created living entities are supposed to please the Supreme Lord. For that purpose, we are created. So when the living entity is in its constitutional position, then the living entity can be happy. And when we are not in our original nature of serving the Lord, then we will not be able to completely be happy. That is the reason. Next question, next chapter is why am I suffering? Right? So who are we? You understood, right? Why am I suffering? Is because main reason is that we are not in our natural position. We are not in our constitutional position. Our constitutional nature is to supposed to serve the Lord. Jivera Swarup, Hoy Krishna and Nityadas. So to serve the Lord. So when we are in the constitutional position, we becomes completely happy. But when we are trying to enjoy independent of the Lord, then we come to the material world. The material world is just it's a Maya world, no? Or it's a Maya Jagat. Actually, it is created by the Lord's external potency. The material world is created because the living entity wants to enjoy. Some of the living entities in the spiritual world, they have a feeling or a tendency to that they feel that I want to enjoy independently. So as soon as the living entity has this kind of desire, they are immediately transferred to the material world of the Supreme Lord. Okay, so the material world is, we have discussed it. It's just like it's like a toy world, we can see, right? We had given the example that, for example, a child of 6 years asks his father, no, he want to drive the car of the father. The father will not give the car because no, it knows that it is not good for him. So what he will do is that he'll buy a toy car, and so that the child can be satisfied. He'll try. The child will play with the toy car and become happy. Similarly, the material world is like that. In scriptures, talks about the material world as a reflection of the spiritual world. Now we are then the shloka. It is there, 9th chapter. Right? Urdha moolam adashagam ashwatam prahuram avyaya. So urdha moolam adashaga. So the material world is just like a reflection. So when there is a tree which is standing on the shore of a lake or a river, the reflection is seen in the river, but actually the reflection is not real because we cannot enjoy the fruits. For example, if the tree is having nice fruits, we cannot try to pluck the fruit from the reflection and try to enjoy it. So the material world, the living entity is continuously trying to pluck the reflection fruit and try to enjoy. That is why we are never successful in our endeavor. One of the reasons. So we are suffering because one is that we are not in our constitutional position. Just like a fish can be happy only when it is in the water. Whatever comforts we try to do, give to the fish on the land, it will not be happy. It will always be suffocating. Similarly, the living entity is not in our. We are not in our constitutional position. We are not actually. This body is a forceful imposition of the living entity. We are not supposed to have this gross body, which is actually full of difficulties, suffering, but we are forced to take it. So this is not our natural position, right? Our natural position is to be in a spiritual form, in a spiritual body, and serving the Lord. So that is one primary reason for the suffering, and secondary reason is that once the living entity, so the material world, as we discussed earlier, no, it is like a creation of the Lord, and though the material world is a virtual world, kind of, but nevertheless it has rules and regulation. There are material rules and regulation, material laws. So some of the material laws we know from our schools, like for example, the law of gravity, or there are different rules by which we are actually subject to this material behavior. So if I just think about a place now, let's say I think about some holy dham, no, I think about Vrindavan. I cannot reach Vrindavan immediately, right? In the mind I may be, but I cannot I cannot physically be present in Vrindavan because this is because of the time space paradigm which is there in the material world. There are so many material paradigms by which we are conditioned to all those things. We cannot overcome them. But actually, in the spiritual form, the soul is not subjected to any of these restrictions. Okay, so this way. So similarly, there are rules of karma in the material world. Anybody who actually takes birth in the material world, in the human form, they are actually subject to the laws of karma, but not animals or other living entities. They are not suffered. Only in the human form we are subject to karma. So according to the law of karma, we have to, whatever action we perform, there will be an opposite reaction for that, right? So if I do good activities, there will be good results. If I do bad activities, there will be bad results. So this way, the law of karma continuously binds the living entity to the cycle of birth and death. So so whatever I am doing today, right, I will have to enjoy or suffer the results of that activity tomorrow. and whatever I am already suffering is because of my past activity. And also, according to various scriptures never look the life, to restrict the life to one lifetime. Basically the life is a continuum. And then actually we have taken, every living entity has taken so many births. Actually nobody can count how many births, millions of lifetimes we have taken in this material world, life after life, based on the karma and desire of the living entity, we keep on getting new and new bodies. So basically the desire, so the living entity came to the material world because he want to enjoy independence of the Lord. And once that desire is there, that is the starting of our cycle. And consequently the living entity keeps on having new and new desire. In every lifetime we have so many desires that are accumulated, and all these desire will ensure that we get more and more lifetimes to satisfy those desire. Okay, it is not just desire actually, but also we should have the sufficient karma. Just like, just like if I have a nice desire to buy a very expensive car, right? Let's say some car which is very expensive. It doesn't mean that I can buy, right? I have to also accumulate the money for it. So similarly, the divinity has to have the good karma if you want to enjoy. So the karma plus the desire will ensure its body. So in Bhagavad Gita, it is told that Yandra Rudani Maya, right? What is the shloka? Ishara Sarva Bhudani. No. Yes. Ishara Sarvabhudanam Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtadi. Brahmayan Sarvabhudani Yandrarudani Maya. So basically that's what Ishvara Sarvabhudanam. Bhudanam means living entity. So Ishvara Sarvabhudanam. So this is talking about the Ishvara, Bhagavan or Supreme Lord is situated in every living entity in the heart as Paramatma. Ishvara Sarvabhudanam. Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtadi. He's saying Arjuna, it is situated, the Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in every living entity's heart. Then Brahmayan Sarvabhudani Yandra Rudani Maya. Mean Brahmayan Sarvabhudani. So the living entity is wandering in so many different species of bodies, right? Yandra Rudani Maya. So the Maya is giving a suitable machine for the living entity to satisfy his desire. So if you have a desire to fly, the material nature will give you a body of a bird so that you can fulfill that particular desire. So like that, but it is not very simple. No? Just one example we are telling like that, but it's extremely complex how a next body is decided actually. It is not just one desire. It's a combination of so many desires and so many lifetimes that vasanas, everything actually decides the next birth. So, but nevertheless, there's a material law by which actually the living entities are forced to accept different bodies based on the is karma and desire. Okay, then actually we discussed about material world. So material world already we discussed. Yes.
Yeah, in that why I'm suffering, we have like the sources of suffering also we have covered, like
Yes,
other
Adi Devik. Yeah.
Adi Devika and Adi Bodhika.
Yes, Adhyatmic, Adi Devik, and Adi Baudik. The three type of
Yeah,
kleshas are there,
yeah.
which is caused by the self, other living entity, and nature, or the or the demigods. Yes, yes, Mataji, nice point. Okay, so then I think we are. I don't know how much time we have. So I just want to check how much time you all have today. Shalini Mataji.
Prabhuji,
Hmm.
anything till 12:30 or 1, I'm fine.
Okay. What about other devotees?
Till 12:30 or yeah, 12:45 should be fine, I think, so, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji,
So
same.
that to make the lunch
The
preparations.
12:30 should be,
Yeah,
yeah.
12:30.
Okay, so basically,
Yeah,
if you,
Prabhuji,
just
1
accordingly,
p.m.
we have to decide the speed, how much we have to go. So you do you have devotees have questions, or we just go to summaries that fine, or I'm not sure about that.
I just wanted to know, Prabhuji, I don't want to cut the flow, but whenever it's this one is done, Prabhuji, is to
Okay.
how to determine whether we are advancing truly,
Yes. Sure.
in our spiritual life. What are the, points, that we can. I know it's difficult, to know for sure, but in your experience and Mataji's experience,
Yes,
right?
Mataji. We can
Prabhuji.
definitely tell about that. Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
I, yeah, we can. Yeah, some of the devotees will answer actually. Also, first I will give the chance to devotees. So Mataji, just after you finish this flow, no, then we'll come to the question, Mataji. Is that okay?
Yes, sure, Prabhuji. Whenever you are.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll just complete. So we have reached. Then I will not be able to complete this summary. So we'll go through the summary. So we'll go a little faster. Okay, if that is fine, and then no, we'll come to the questions. Okay, so what is the material world? I think we have discussed already, right? We have some idea. As we discussed, no, material world is external energy of the Lord. So Lord has different energies, internal, external, and the marginal. right? So the internal energy is known as Yoga Maya or Andaranga Shakti, which is a spiritual. The spiritual world is actually functioning based on the Yoga Maya potency or the internal energy of the Lord. The external energy is the material world or material energy of the Lord, which is known as Mahamaya or Durga. She is the controller of the external energy of the Lord. So this is so all the material world we see, right? The material world and the material manifestations, the modes of nature, all these things are actually the external energy of the Lord. So we are in the material world, which we discussed already. Like it's just like a reflection of the spiritual world, and also it is mentioned that just a moment. Can you check the mute here? I have to keep on muting. It's difficult actually. Can you just look if some voice is coming? You can mute them. Okay. So yeah, so the material world actually, so basically it is told in scriptures that material nature is 1/3 of the entire creation, and spiritual world is the 3/4, right? 1/4 and 3/4. Sorry. So 1/4 is the Ekapada Vibhuti, which is all the material world, and 3/4 is the spiritual world. Okay, so that means the spiritual world is much bigger actually than the material world. Okay, and so only very small fragment of the living entities are in the material world. Majority are in the spiritual world. But no, so we can understand how big it will be. So the material world actually that we are living, we have only information about the Earth planet, which actually is a very small part of the entire material creation. The Earth is part of this material one universe, and there are innumerable universes, right? There is no end actually to the Lord's potency, and we have discussed about those details actually. So if somebody is interested in that material world and other thing, we have some we had actually some sessions a couple of months back about the Bhumandala, Bhuloka, right? Cosmic Vedic cosmology. So they can go through that session. But in a nutshell, actually, we can understand that the material world is extremely, is very huge. It's infinite actually. Nobody can measure the length and breadth of the material universe itself. So what to talk about the spiritual world, right? And the spiritual world actually is not at all accessible to the living entities because they are conditioned by the material modes and they are limited by their material senses. Okay, even so we not don't even have an access to the material world. So this way the material world is very vast, right? And then we are living in the material world, and material world is characterized by the three modes of nature, which are sattva-guna, raja-guna, and tamo-guna, right? And so every living entity is actually always under the influence of one of these modes, right? So sometimes we are in the mode of goodness, sometimes in the mode of passion, sometimes in the mode of ignorance. So it is told that the material modes always compete with each other to try to overcoming, try to get dominance on the other. So this way the living entity is continuously so how the living entity acts in the material world is by the modes of nature. Based on his past desire and vasana, the living entity is subjected to different thoughts and actions by the modes, and accordingly, he actually accumulates reactions of his activity. Then who is God? So God actually. So these are the different. Some of the things we are discussing are the important topics which are discussed in Bhagavad Gita. Right? There are 5 topics in Bhagavad Gita. No, actually, which is the Jiva, the Paramatma, then Kala, Prakriti, and Karma. Okay, these are the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so who is God? Actually, who is Ishvara? Right? God is the Supreme Lord. So we actually generally understand. We have different understanding of the God, in our normal day-to-day life, because we don't have correct understanding because we don't properly read the scriptures. And even if you read, also it is very difficult to understand. Understand without the help of a spiritual master who is already self-realized. It is very difficult to comprehend the Vedas, because Vedas actually, as we discussed, it's extremely vast, and different people reading Veda will come to different conclusions based on their level of development or their level of actually progress in spiritual life. Different people will can take different lessons or different conclusions from the Vedas. But it is understood that somebody, the acharyas who have actually gone to the depths of Vedas, who have become self-realized, who has become perfect, they have come to the conclusion, same conclusion. No, they have only one conclusion. That actually we have in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Krishna says, Vedesha sarve rahameva vedyo, Vedantakrit Veda Videka chaham. He says that from all the Vedas, I am to be understood. Vedesha sarve ahameva vedyo, I am to be understood. And Vedesha Sarmir Ahameva Vedanta Krit Veda Videkacham. He's saying that I am the compiler of Vedas. And if anybody knows the Vedas perfectly, only the Supreme Lord. I am the only person who knows the Vedas. So actually, this is the final conclusion of the Acharya. And Lord Krishna is directly saying also that the purpose of knowing all the Vedas is ultimately to come to the conclusion that who is the Supreme Lord. Right? If you are not able to come to that conclusion, and you are basically, we can completely wander in the Vedas. Just like we are wandering in the material indefinite or infinite number of material universes, we can completely wander in the different Vedic scriptures and go to from no, and we can go from different philosophies, but we will never come to a proper conclusion actually. Right? So that actually we need the help of acharyas and also a disciplic succession, which is coming from the Supreme Lord Himself. So that is the importance of a parampara, right? A parampara is that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, no, Imam Vivaswade Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyam, right? So he says that this particular spiritual knowledge I have already spoken to sun god. So the Vedic knowledge is again and again provided. Though Lord provides the Vedic scriptures, many times he himself comes and again instructs the living entities about the Vedic knowledge. So Krishna has actually spoken Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna 5,000 years before, right? Similarly, Krishna has spoken to Uddhava, in the form of Uddhava Gita, the same scriptural knowledge. In the beginning of the creation, Krishna has spoken this knowledge to Lord Brahmaji. Like that, the Lord actually, again and again come to re-establish the religious principle and give the correct knowledge. So, so that is why the Vedic knowledge is very difficult to understand. And unless and until we have made real progress and attained perfection, it is very difficult to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the conclusion, who is God, is that God actually means Ishvara or a controller. There are innumerable gods possible, right? Anybody who is a controller is a small god. And then the demigod, generally people tend to think that demigods are also, everybody is same. Worshipping any demigod is same as worshipping Supreme Lord, which is not a correct understanding. Because demigods are all post actually. According to scriptures, we understand that for example, if you take Indra, Chandra, Varuna, etc., Vayu, they are all post actually, right? So they live for a particular period. They live for one Manu's period. And every day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. So one day of Manu, every Manu's time, the post of demigod actually changes. So today, that is what current Manu is actually known as Vaivasvata Manu. And the current sun god is known as Vivaswan. So that is why in Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Imam Vivasvade Yogam. He's saying that this yoga I have told to Vivaswan, the current sun god. But actually before that, many sun gods were there. Indra is also, current Indra's name is there. I forgot actually what his name is. Sakra, I think. I don't know. So the Indra also different names. So all the demigods are all temporary actually. Right? Lord Brahma, and then Brahma actually lives for much longer period. One day of Brahma, we told now, one day of Brahma there are 14 Manus. So the Brahma's period is life is very, very long. That is 1,000 yugas, 1,000 Mahayugas is one day of Brahma. Right? And then like Brahma live for 100 years, which is around 311 trillion years. But nevertheless, after this 311 trillion years, 40 billion years, Brahma's life is over. And then the new universe is created and the new Brahma will come to existence. So this way, so we have to understand who is the supreme, right? Who is God? The ultimate God is only one. Though there are many gods, right? So sometimes other religious people make fun of Hindus, saying that okay, you have so many gods. What is this actually? How is it possible? And things like that. So that actually, because we don't have a complete understanding, we also sometimes don't retaliate. We may think that okay, it is true we have so many gods, but actually the fact is not that. The Supreme Lord is always one, right? That is what Brahmaji is mentioned in Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So the Supreme Lord is Krishna, right? And for him there is no beginning or end, right? Sarva Karana Karanam is the cause of all. So this way we understood who is God. Then we talked about Lord Chaitanya and Sankirtan movement. So Supreme Lord Krishna, he actually his incarnations are just like the waves of the ocean, right? It's unlimited. Generally, if we say that there are Dashavadaras, right? But actually, that is just a very small summary or just the most prominent incarnation in this particular day of Brahma. But Lord actually takes infinite number of incarnations, right? And it is told that the pastimes of the Lord are continuously happening in different universes. So, for example, Krishna's pastime happened in Dwapara Yuga in Earth, right, some 5,000 years ago. But that Krishna's pastime happens in every universe simultaneously. In one after another, it's happening. So, like that, then there are innumerable incarnations of the Lord. So this way, the Lord's incarnations are innumerable. But it is told that once in a day of Brahma, the original Krishna comes, right? All other times, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu comes as Krishna. So that is why generally people say that okay, Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, which is not wrong. So generally, Vishnu, the Kshirodakshaya Vishnu expands as different incarnation, and in Krishna also comes like that. But once in a day of Brahma, actually, the original Krishna from the spiritual world, the Swayam Bhagavan, who is in the topmost spiritual world, who actually Krishna, Supreme Lord, actually directly comes, it descends to the material world in Dwapara Yuga. So in that particular day of Brahma, in the next subsequent Kali Yuga, the Lord, Supreme Lord, the Swayam Bhagavan again comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? Is Krishna, is not different from Krishna. That's what we saw in Bhagavatam. And we have seen all the scriptural references, right? At least 15-20 scriptures references we saw about the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who is Krishna himself. In Bhagavatam, it says that Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Parshadam Yatnei Sankirtana Praye Yajandihi Sumedasa. So he says that in Kali Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam. So in this particular Kali Yuga, Krishna's, he will not come actually in the black complexion. Akrishnam. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam. Sango Pangasta Parshadam Yatnei Sankirtana Praye Yajandihi Sumedasa. So in this Kali Yuga, the Lord actually comes and his weapons will be the chanting of the holy names, right? Itnei Sankirtana Praye. So this way, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most merciful incarnation of all the different incarnation, right? So he is the most merciful, and so we are actually very fortunate that we are actually associated with the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with Supreme Lord Himself. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the speciality of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Krishna says Arjuna, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Egam Sharanam Vraja. Aham Tvam Sarva Bhabebhyo Moksha Ikshami Mashura. Krishna says that you surrender unto me, give up everything, and you completely surrender. So Krishna's standard expectation is very high. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows that in Kali Yuga, the conditioned souls are extremely fallen. There is no scriptural, there are no religious principles. No, they don't have the intelligence. So that is why Yajanti Sumaya, the site is told that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, only the most intelligent person, people will be able to identify him as a Supreme Lord, and only the most intelligent person will worship him. But nevertheless, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very merciful, and he has given a very simple process, and he doesn't ask us to completely surrender. Okay, he actually says that you just chant the holy names of the Lord. Okay, that is what actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is expecting. He doesn't expect any qualification in the conditioned soul. He only condition he expects is that we should be sincere in our heart, and we should have a sincere desire to attain the topmost destination. So if you are having that, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is ready to give us the topmost benediction, which is Krishna Prema, which is the topmost that can be achieved in the human form of life. Right. So this way Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years ago. And then he has distributed his mercy, and along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu also came, who is Lord Baldev, right, and Krishna. They came actually in the Kali Yuga. Then in the next chapter, we discussed about the glories of holy name. I think that actually we already know, right? So basically, we have seen the scriptural references of what questions, huh? Not yet over actually. Couple of minutes will end up. So glories of the holy name. So we have seen that multiple places we have seen that in this particular age of Kali Yuga, the process of attaining perfection is chanting the holy name, right? So what is that shloka? Kalir dosha nide rajan asti ekan mahan guna kirtana neva krishnasya mukta sangha param vrjet. Then kalir dosha nide rajan. Yeah. Then harer nama eva kevalam kalau nasteva gadiranyada. Then Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Idi Shodashagnam Namnam Kali Kalmashanashanam Mattaparadharobhaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. So all these scriptures are saying that in Kali Yuga there is no better process than chanting the holy names. Right? So Narad Muni is saying, Brahmaji, that after searching through all the Vedic scriptures, I couldn't find a method which is more sublime than the chanting of the holy name. So this way it is again and again established that chanting of the holy name is the most important thing. Right? Then actually we discuss about reincarnation. So in the interest of time, I think we have to little bit hurry. So reincarnation, actually we discussed in detail. We saw many videos, and we had discussed about some research in the modern daytime. It has been conducted on the reincarnation topic by Ian Stevenson from the US, and he has documented so many cases of reincarnation. Like it done a scientific study with actually many other people. And then it was observed that there were a lot of cases where actually, there was reincarnation was established. Like small children were able to remember their previous lifetime, give exact details of the previous place where they lived, their relatives, they were able to identify and things like that. So from a modern perspective, but nevertheless, scriptures and Vedic culture, reincarnation is just a very common given thing. Nobody even question about reincarnation. But today's world, people don't have faith. They think that okay, one life is everything. But Vedic scriptures categorically, everywhere it is actually talking about, we have so many stories, and the basic principle itself is that the soul is eternal, right? So naturally, it has to take birth again and again, in different bodies. So reincarnation topic we discussed. Then karma free activities. We discussed about the 3 type of karma, right? What are 3 type of karma? Akarma and vikarma. So karma is actually a normal activity which we do according to the scriptures, which we get a good reaction, right? And vikarma is the activity which is against scriptural injunction, which will cause sinful reactions. And akarma is that karma which doesn't have any reaction. So akarma actually, according to learned scholars, akarma, it doesn't mean that just being idle and doing nothing, because that is not possible. According to scripture, even for a moment the soul cannot be idle. So living entity's nature is always to be active. So akarma means do activity which doesn't give you a reaction. So what is that activity? Is devotional service. Devotional service is the only activity that actually will not bind the living entity, because actually we are directly connecting with the Supreme Lord. Then we discuss about how to offer food, right? How to spiritualize the food, because this food actually we eat also have karma. And if you eat normal food, then also we are eating sin, because in the grains and in the cooking process there is a lot of knowingly or unknowingly we have to kill different living entities. So the question is not just being vegetarian. Of course, non-vegetarian means extremely sinful because we are directly causing harm to other living entity. But just because we are vegetarian doesn't mean that we are completely sin-free. Because in vegetarian cooking also we have to do some kind of balance. By boiling, small living entities will be killed. So actually, some plants we have to kill, etc. So the idea is that we have to offer whatever actually we are eating first to the Supreme Lord, and then make it a prasadam and then consume, so that the food actually we take doesn't have reaction. Then we discuss about Ante Narayana Smriti. What is the importance of remembering the Supreme Lord at the time of death, right? Because we discussed the example of the entire life is like a preparation and death is an exam. So in the whatever actually you do at the time of death is like the exam. That will decide the entire. 1 second, I'll have to deal with something here. So Ande Narayana Smriti, we have seen the example of Ajamila story, right? So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Bhavismaran Bhavam Tachnande Kalevaram Tam Tam Evedi Kaundeya Sadadat Bhava Bhavida. Whatever consciousness a person has at the time of death, so accordingly he gets the next body. That state he will attain without doubt. Then Krishna says that Andagalecha Mameva Smaran Muktva Kalevaram Ye Prayadi Samad Bhavam Yadinasyatra Samshaya. Whoever remembers me at the time of death, he will attain me. He will not take birth again, right? And he will attain my abode. So this is the Ande Narayana. So this is very, very important. Most important point actually we have to always remember is, what is like how is life like in preparation and how death is the exam. So unless and until we prepare throughout our life, we will not be able to pass the exam, right? So that is why we do all the activities in such a way that we are coming to our consciousness is elevated to a spiritual consciousness, where actually we are always able to remember the Supreme Lord, so that naturally at the time of death also we will be able to remember the Lord. Okay, then eternity of bhakti we discussed. What it means is that whatever devotional activity, even if it's small amount of devotional progress we make in our life, that is never lost. Swalpam abhyasya dharmasya trayade mahado bhayat. So even if you make 1% progress in this life, you will be able to continue from 2% in the next life. So that way devotional activity is eternal. It is never lost actually. Okay. So that is eternity of bhakti. I think some of the things we are discussing. Yeah. Then what are the 9 processes of bhakti? Navavid bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Parasevanam, Archanam, Mandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. So we discussed about it. Like Shravanam means hearing, Kirtanam means chanting or singing the glories of the holy names, Smaranam means remembering the Lord, Parasevanam means doing service actually to the Lord, Archanam means doing worship, temple worship or deity worship, Vandanam means paying obeisances and prayers, Dasyam becoming a servant of the Lord, Sakyam means becoming a friend, Atmanivedana means completely surrendering, everything surrendering to the Lord. So for each of these topics, we saw one example of a devotee who actually achieved perfection by doing that. And it is told that even if you can become perfect in even one of the activities, we can become perfect. It is not that all of them we have to perform, but nevertheless, to increase our chance of success, we try to practice multiple, so that we become successful in our endeavor. Then rules and regulations we discussed about. For anything to be successful in the material world also, we have to be determined and focused, right? We have to take austerity. Like we give the example of students or studying for some competitive exams or IIT, etc. They have to have a systematic approach and a way to succeed. So similarly, to achieve success in spiritual life, we need to follow certain rules and regulations, and the rules and regulations are meant for people who are in the beginning stage. We gave the example of a child who is walking. A small child has the inherent capacity to walk. It is not that the child, somebody has to teach the child to walk, right? The child has to just practice. It is there. The tendency to walk is already there in the child, but actually when he practices walking, he becomes naturally, he's naturally able to walk. Similarly, devotional attitude towards the Supreme Lord is an inherent characteristic of all living entity. Nobody has to artificially teach it. But because we have not practiced devotional service for so many lifetimes, now it appears to us as artificial. We have to force us to do devotional service, because not everybody, but most of us actually will have that situation, that we don't feel natural affinity to do devotional service, because actually because of so many lives of contamination, we don't feel that natural thing. But it is there inherent, just like a fire which is covered by ash, like in a charcoal, for example. Apparently outside it looks like it is extinguished, but actually when you fan it, you can see that there's a fire. So similarly, every living entity has that fire or spiritual what you call potency, to connect to Supreme Lord, but it is covered because of our contamination of so many lifetime. So the why we do regulated devotional service is actually to just to revive that Krishna consciousness. So acharyas have given us a particular method how I can we revive it actually back. So that is why we need rules and regulations, right, to succeed in devotional life. But then when somebody makes advancement in devotional life, when you become perfect or very higher stage of devotional service, then these rules and regulations may not be so important. But nevertheless, the advanced devotees also follow the rules and regulation just to show other people, set an example. Otherwise, for them it is not required. We discussed about the importance of prayers. Like example of Akrura we have taken, right? How prayers are important. So prayers is one of the anga of bhakti, one of the ways of becoming perfect, right? So all of us know importance of prayer. All of us do prayers in some way or other. But actually, it is told that in scriptures there are a lot of good prayers where pure devotees of the Lord, no, pray to the Lord, glorifying them. And in those scriptures, it is mentioned that those prayers are very glorious. And if you also able to sing those prayers, then actually we also can become perfect. So our prayer should not be, just that my son should get a first rank, or no, this particular disease should go away, or I should get a new house, I should get a car. All these are material things, right? But actually, our purpose is not to become successful materially. It is not that. So we have done so many people we can see materially successful in our life. What is the end of the day? Everybody has to leave the body, and the next life nobody knows whether they will get a human body or not. So the real purpose we have to see. The real prayer should be how to get out of the cycle of birth and death. We should pray to the Lord that we should actually become free from the cycle of birth and death. That is very important. Then we discussed last time. We discussed about service to Tulsi Maharani. So the Tulsi Maharani, what is the importance of Tulsi worship? How Tulsi is so dear to the Lord, right? Why actually Tulsi Vrinda Tulsi is also known as Vrinda, right? And Vrindavan, Vrindavan in Mathura, actually the forest of Tulsi leaves, where actually Krishna has performed his pastime. And this Tulsi is actually a resident of spiritual world, and she has also come to the material world to give mercy to the devotees. And by worshipping Tulsi, we can completely become purified. So we discussed in last time about those things, right? How to worship the Tulsi Maharani, and we can chant. See, just by sitting in front of Tulsi Maharani, we become purified, right? And by worshipping her, circumambulating her, offering water to her, etc., we can attain a lot of spiritual credits. And it is a very good place also to chant the holy names, right? We can sit in front of Tulsi Maharani and chant holy names. So all these things we discussed. So these are the things we discussed till now. Okay, so we have done a quick recap. So now we can go to the questions. So first question, Aruna Madhu just asked the question that how can we understand or how can we measure our spiritual progress, or how do we know whether I am making spiritual progress? So I would like other devotees to give their comments actually. Then maybe after that we can also add some points to that. Who want to say? Niveda Mataji, you want to say? Or Indarchand Prabhu?
Prabhuji, there is one sloka there. Utsahat Nischayat
Dhairyat.
Dhairyat Tatya Karma Pravartanat. That sloka, is it giving the example of this?
Yes, so basically that shloka is from Nectar of Instruction. It is talking about what are the things which are favorable to devotional service and what are the things which are unfavorable. Utsaha Nishya Dhairya Tattat Karma Pravartanat Jana Sangasya Laulyam Cha. No, what is that? Utsaha Nishya Dhairya Tattat Karma Pravartanat Jana Sangasya Laulyam Cha Sadbir Bhakti Vinashati. Yeah, so Utsaha Nishya Dhairya Tattat Karma Pravartanat, right? Sangat Tyago Sada Vrittet Sadbir Bhaktir Prasiddhati. So that is a shloka. So that actually talks about what are the also it indirectly, it is also some symptoms actually of somebody who's making progress, right? Utsaha means he is actually very enthusiastic. Nishya means very much determined. Utsaha Nishya Dhairyat means what is that? Determination. Patience, yeah. Utsaha Nishya Dhairya Tattat Karma Pravartana means following the instructions of scriptures and religious scriptures, etc. So this is also some of the symptoms, Prabhu. That is right. So basically, there are some kind of So some things are like little theoretical, and some things are practical. So by observing, actually, we can see certain things. But everybody can test.
Asang Tyagat also.
Yes, Asat Sangha. So basically, giving up relationship of Asat Sangha. Asat Sangha Tyaga. Yes.
Non-devotees.
Non-devotees. How do you explain? So this Prabhuji Indrachand Prabhu, that is a very nice point. So these are some of the symptoms actually, right? So if you see a devotee who is making progress, see this is very, very important. Asat Sangha Tyaga Ye Vaishnava Achar. So Asat Sanga Tyaga is a very, very important quality of a devotee. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that what is the qualification, what is the identification of a devotee is Asat Sanga Tyaga, because he will give up the association of non-devotees or people who are materially attached. Because thing is that it's very simple thing, na? Basically a man can be identified by the friends which he is moving around, or no, similarly a
Yes.
woman also. So basically, somebody who wants to become successful in IIT, he'll have friends who are all preparing for IIT. Somebody who want to go to IAS, no, he'll have friends who are IAS, right? And somebody who want to become who is actually addicted to what you call intoxication, he will have friends who are all addicts. So similarly, so when somebody is a devotee, he will have his friends will all be devotees, and he will not have association of non-devotees. That is very important characteristics. Externally, yeah, that is true. But how do we know? Let's say if I want to ask myself, no, like let's say am I making progress? No, how do I know whether I'm making progress? This is one question. Also, another way, no, another aspect of the question. Shalini Manoj, you want
Yeah,
to say something?
probably like
Hmm. Yes,
like
Nivedita.
what I observed, like what I experienced is always I feel like taking Harinama, Krishna's words. He's always thinking of Krishna and always chanting, remembering him. Basically, always remembering him, and
Yes.
yeah, and always like wants to chant, want to do something. Like even though getting distracted sometimes also, but in some of the corner, in the corner of the heart, it will be like pulling me. Okay, I have to chant, I have to offer food, and remember always like to be remembering Lord, and like theoretically, but it is like what I heard is like one should be very humble, even though friends and enemies should be treated as same. If you are
Hmm.
progress,
जी मंदिर के लिए राखी ठीक है ना
and one more thing is we should be like material desires should be, we have to reduce our material desires. We have to
Yes.
control our, yeah, our mind and all. Our senses has to be controlled. So basically, after in Krishna consciousness, after reading the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, chanting and all, basically we have to will that they will make us to self-realize more.
Yes.
We will realize ourselves like we are the soul, we are not the body. Accordingly, it will help us to control ourselves and do what is required, what is actually required, so that we can go back to Godhead and
Yes.
get rid of this birth and death life cycle.
Yes, Manoj.
And whatever it is coming, right, or like sufferings and all, if they are coming also based, we will understand that it is based on our karma.
Hmm.
Because of that reason, we are suffering, and
Yes.
what we should do so that in the next birth, or if at all, if it are we next birth, we have to take as a um, take birth as a devotee, so that at least we should be like, and we know, right, in the Krishna conscious movement, everyone now who are out attending the classes, they know, right, the our this is our exam, death is our real exam, and what has to be done at that point. So these
Yes.
are the, yeah, these are the things like progressing means basically I feel like these in these ways our consciousness is purified and we know what we are doing. So it is a step to for progressing.
Yes, Mataji. So one important thing, na? Yes, so Aruna Mataji, I hope these answers are helping you. One important thing I would, from my side, I would like to say is that one easy way to test the progress in what already she has told, actually, Niveda Mataji told, is that no, how much we are becoming detached from a material life. So this is a very, very important measure. So if you are continuing to be attached to the material things, right, and we are not developing some kind of small detachment or understanding so basically, if you are able to start seeing the world from a different perspective, start seeing from a different angle, that is one of the tests, no, by which we can understand that we are making progress. If you continue exactly what we are doing all the time, then actually no, that means that we are not making progress, right? We should start having a different view of the perspective of the world, how we look at different things. That is one thing we will have. What most important thing is that we will start understanding, we'll start reducing our material attachments. No, so generally we are so much attached to material things, right? So our activities, if you observe, everything is actually trying to do sense gratification. No, for example, simple thing is that no, like somebody may have a addiction of buying things, like no, shopping, right? Online shopping, for example. So I will keep on buying new things. So these are all small things actually. I know you may think how it is related to spirituality, but these are all kind of desire to accumulate things. So any kind of sense gratification, or any kind of attachment to the material things. So whether we are able to see, for example, when you look at your children, right, is your attitude towards your children changing? Because generally our attitude towards children is that we are very much attached, we are very much possessive about our children, right? So any small thing, even a small scratch happened, we are so much concerned. So the thing is that what I'm trying to say is that no, we are not becoming a sannyasi or something that anything happened to our children, we are not bothered. That is not a thing. But naturally, gradually, we will have a different understanding of how we see the things. Somebody passes away in our family, how do we look at that, right? Or something happens to our relatives, how do we look at that? How do we approach that? So all these things will change actually when you make progress in devotional life. So the most important, one very important thing is detachment actually from the material life. That is one thing, and at the same time developing attachment to the Lord. So these are all, detachment from the material life is actually it's not a very advanced stage. Actually, it's a very early stage actually, but the amount of detachment will be varying, right? Somebody is completely surrendered to the Lord, he will be completely detached from everything, but that is a very advanced stage. But detachment from material world is very sure symptom of making progress in spiritual life. But if you are not making, see, generally what we see, in our day-to-day life, we see that there are so many people who are so-called spiritualists. They may be, they may be doing different things. Somebody may be just a devotee of some demigod, or somebody may be following some particular process in spirituality. Maybe they may be following Ashtanga yoga, or somebody may be following meditation, etc., etc. But many times what we see is that their life never changes. There's no transformation in the heart. They'll just do this thing also, and then they do everything what they used to do also. They'll just continue their life without any realization happening in their life. But actually, somebody who is actually making progress in Krishna consciousness, serious, they will definitely, their heart will get transformed. That is one important change happened, and their perspective toward their life, they will start practicing in their life. We can see that their life, visibly their life is changing. How they approach towards different things will change. So this is one point I wanted to say, Mataji. And otherwise, actually, we have another measure is, now we have discussed that there are different stages of bhakti we discussed, right? So the different phases in the progress of devotional life. We discussed about Adav Shraddha, Tada Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, Ruji, Asakti, Bhava, and Prema. So these are 9 steps in the progress of devotional life. And each of these actually indicate the progress. So in the beginning, somebody who has just come to devotional life, he will not have any change in his life. He will just have some little faith. That is Adav Shraddha. You will just have a little faith. That is the first stage. Then next, actually, we say if he's little more advanced, then we'll see that he'll have sadhu sangha. He will start associating with devotees. So the ruchi to associate devotees actually is definitely a measure of progress. Because generally, from our upbringing and general inclination, we are not much inclined to associate with devotees, anybody. Because even in my life also, initially when I was practicing, no, I was not interested. Like I'll try to avoid other devotees. I'll just go to temple, take darshan, and come back. That's all. And I'll chant and I do my life, my activities. That's all. I don't think about anybody else. So that kind of mentality is a neophyte mentality. Very in early stages we'll be like that. But when we are making some progress in devotion life, then we become very attracted to devotees. Since we start appreciating other devotees. We look for their company, in their association. So that is also a symptom of progress. Adav Shraddha, Tada Sadhu Sangha. That is very important actually. They're having some interest to associate with devotees. That is a measure of progress in devotional life. Adav Shraddha, Tada Sangha, Bhajana Kriya. Then actually we start doing chanting. We start developing some taste in kirtan, chanting, etc. Adav Shraddha, Tada Sangha, Bhajana Kriya. Anartha Nivritti. The next stage is Anartha Nivritti. So this is the stage which we discussed some time back, right? Anartha Nivritti is the stage where we become gradually detached from material things. So we have so many anarthas, means that things which doesn't make much sense in our life. Much meaning. Artha means there's a meaning. It's very important to me. But anarthas are those things. Apparently, from a spiritual perspective, they don't have any value. But nevertheless, because of our conditioning, we are very attached to those things. Simple things. If you look at our possessions in our life, right, what all things we are having, you can just analyze whether we really need all those things. Because what is happening, the more the possessions we have, the more we become entangled. Simple example I'll give you. For example, let's say you have a refrigerator at home. Okay, so you may, some point of time you may think that okay, this refrigerator is not sufficient for me. No, actually, for example, I'm not. There's no enough space, or no, like the freezer is not working properly. Some reason you may find that you will start thinking that I need a new refrigerator. Then what will happen? That thought will come. It will linger in your mind for some days. Then after that, you will start doing some research, finding out what are the different refrigerators available. Maybe you go online and search, or you talk to different friends. Then basically you waste a lot of time in doing the research. Then after that also you will not be able to decide immediately. You will go and search what are the different refrigerator, well, different websites will go, then you will shortlist which. So basically then you will order the refrigerator. That will also spend a lot of time for you. And after ordering, what will happen, you will anxiously wait when it is going to come, when is the delivery date. So basically the point what I'm trying to say is that even a small thing as a refrigerator or a very small thing, no, it can take so much of energy out of it, time and energy of and thought or conscious and everything. So much is drained away, no, just by the attachment of a small thing. But actually, without knowing, we are attached to so many things, and it happens in a day-to-day life. So, what to speak about our children and other family members? Now, so the more the possessions we have, the more the entanglement we are having. And sometimes we have attachments like, can you mute? You're not able to hear. Other thing actually, for example, no, like we may be attached to sleep in a particular way. Like if I sleep on this particular sofa or no particular cushion or a particular pillow, I need 3 pillows. So apparently these are very silly things, but no, but we don't know that we are so much attached. When you are able to, when you want to travel somewhere and you want to go for a yatra to a holy place, then you will find it very difficult to adjust because I need that particular kind of bed or a particular mosquito net, no, or particular tea I need on the morning. So basically, so many small things are called anarthas. These are all small attachments in our life, which actually we don't even realize that we have those attachments. But we'll know that we have. When you don't have that, we'll realize, okay, this is I'm not able to adjust. So this is just an example. So this way we are attached to so many things. So this is anartha nivritti. Then after anartha, so this anartha nivritti stage is called a clearing stage. It will take very long time. No, even it may take full lifetime actually to become free from anarthas. So this is the process through which most devotees get stuck. Then after anartha nivritti, then comes nishtha, means there is very strong faith. In no, whoever whatever anybody tells actually, even Krishna also comes and tell, no, I am not the supreme. They will not accept it. They will say no. They will not change their mind. They are so much having determination and conviction that no, this is actually the process. This is the process by which I can make attain perfection. Nobody can shake their foot. That is nishtha. Then after that, ruji is the actually very much taste in chanting the holy names and devotional activity. So currently, devotional activity we do, it's like a burden, or it becomes a forced upon us. No, we don't have natural happiness or no inclination or enthusiasm to get up early morning, and no, every day I look forward to get up early morning and chant holy name. I'm feeling so blissful. That actually stage where we have ruji, taste in devotional service, right? Then after that comes asakti, it means extreme attachment. Then the other stages are no, not even, we don't have to talk about it actually because that is very advanced. So the point is that there are different ways of we can actually measure our progress in devotional life. Mataji, you want to add something? Aruna Mataji, is it okay? Like you have more questions?
No, Prabhuji, it was very nice answer. Thank you.
Yeah, but is it practical? All devotees, do you think that?
Yes, like we can definitely, Prabhuji. There are some pointers towards where we may be and where we should be reaching. So it is definitely very helpful, all the points. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, Mataji. Anybody else has question? So any other devotees? No, you have any questions or you want to add some more points to that? It's a very important question actually, because how do we, unless until we know that, unless until we know how to measure that we are making progress, we'll be in a kind of a, it's possible, we may be in a fool's paradise. Like we don't know what is happening. We may think that, okay, we are making progress, but we may not be. So that is very important actually to know where are we standing in devotional life? Are we making progress? What is the right thing to do, etc. So that's very important thing to know. Anybody wants to add or comment something? Chetan Kumar?
No, Prabhu. One point, Prabhu, that Prabhuji, like mind control also comes under like progressing on, no, Prabhu. Like if
Yes, Prabhu. Definitely. That is what actually, the transformation of the heart. So when you have transformation of the heart, then mind will automatically become controlled. So ultimately, see, it is told that mind actually is the main cause for a living entity's bondage as well as for liberation. So if the mind is not controlled, then everything, nothing will be in our control. Life will be we'll just become a slave of all the senses, right? So control of the mind is very important. So that is why we can understand that for our anarthas will reduce. So that is also a nice point you brought, Chetan Prabhu. So basically we have the 6 anarthas, right? Tatra kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. So kama, krodha, lobha, mada, matsarya, right? Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. So these are the vices or enemies of the living entity. So a devotee who is making progress, he will gradually become is actually grip on the grip of all these 6 enemies. All the living entity will slacken. It will become loosened. So currently, in the beginning, we are completely in the grip of all these things. for example, kama means lust, krodha, anger. So some of them, and each of us will have one of these vices may be more prominent. For example, somebody may not be able to control their anger actually, once they become angry, they completely forget everything, and then they act in such a way that, like even somebody who's in, like for example, a child also in front of him, he may think like he's enemy, and he may act in such a way. We see that every day, so many things are happening, right? Father is killing the children, child is killing his father, mother, etc., etc. So the anger actually is very is one of the sure way to hell. Like that, all these 6 anarthas, they are all actually, they are royal gate to the hell. So when actually devotee becomes progress, because of the understanding of the situation, naturally, gradually he makes progress. So sometimes no artificial mechanism may not work for long. So sometimes doing, for example, yoga process definitely helps to control the mind, like controlling the breath, right? By doing pranayama, etc. Mind becomes pacified. But if you don't have a real understanding of the situation, so then if it is only a mechanical process, then a particular new situation may actually take us off the guard. It may completely blow away, and we may still fall again. But somebody who is actually having the real understanding of the situation, and by the mercy of the Lord, he'll be protected. Otherwise, actually, even a great yogi also may, for example, we see Durvasa Muni, right? He's a great yogi, mystic yogi, but actually he become envious of Ambarish Maharaj, and he falls down. Vishwamitra Muni is there. He has a great yogi. No, he also falls down when Indra actually sends Menaka, right? So he falls down from his spiritual position. So like that, so many examples. So understanding, so the devotional process is actually more holistic, and basically we are depending on the Supreme Lord, who is the controller of all the different energies, and who is the control of demigod. And if somebody is fully surrendered to the Lord, actually he'll never be defeated in any of these circumstances. So that is why devotional service is much more glorious than other processes. Even mechanically or other ways, actually we may able to control anger by doing, attending some anger control program, or not doing pranayama, etc. We can control to some extent actually anger. But actually, in devotional service, actually we actually completely change or transform our existence itself, so that we become completely free from that. So, but definitely, this is also a symptom. But we may also see that other people who are actually advanced in yoga, or somebody who is like a, who is a, I don't know how to say, like we have some kind of people, right? Apparently we may see some people are very calm and peaceful, but we don't know, they may have two faces actually in one, because understandably your heart is changed, no? You cannot be genuinely, what you call, pure. If genuine purity will come only when the heart is actually transformed. Otherwise, externally some people may be able to demonstrate different qualities, like great, very much calm, like no anger, very peaceful, but actually he may have a different face at home, right? So that is also important point to understand for us. But nevertheless, this is definitely an indication actually, what Chaitanya Prabhu told is that, like having control of the mind or having control of the anger, lust, etc., is also a symptom of, definitely, all devotees will have that symptom, but it is not necessary that all who have that symptom are devotees. Okay, so that's nice point, Prabhu. Any other points or any other questions? Yes. Krishna, any questions are there? I think your time is going on, I think. Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Sushil Kumar.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Actually, I heard in one of the lecture of Amarendra Prabhuji that Bhagavad, if you read Bhagavad Gita in, I mean, for curing our diseases, bodily diseases, some upper part of our body, like from our mouth, then 3 parts. He makes section of three parts, and accordingly first 6 chapters for first part, then middle 6 chapter for middle part, and the beyond below the legs. We should just, read or chant the last six chapters. So, if is it fine we follow reading the Bhagavad Gita in the expectation of curing our bodily diseases, like mentioned, or we should not we should not concentrate only for the curing our body diseases for reading the Bhagavad Gita like that?
So see, the answer will depend on the situation. See, based on the advancement of the devotee, no. See, for example, somebody who's very pure, or I mean more advanced in devotional service, he will not read any scriptures for any material situation. Okay, but actually, if you feel that I'm not sure first about this, what is a scriptural reference for this? I'm not sure. Like what you mentioned, right? Amarendra Prabhu has mentioned. So I don't know whether he has quoted any scriptures. If it is as per the scriptures, because there are Falashrutis are there. In Padma Puran, no, it is actually talking about each chapter has particular benefit. And Srimad Bhagavatam also, there are different pastimes. There are some Falashrutis. So generally, these are meant for people who are very neophyte, who doesn't have any interest in spirituality. To attract those kind of people, whatever is told in scriptures will be true only. But we gradually the understanding is somehow or other, if you come to the spiritual path, that is of course always glorious. Somebody, and that is why there are, Krishna says that there are 4 kinds of people who come to me, right? Artho, Artharthi, Jitnasu, Jnani. These are the 4 kind of people who come to me. Artho means one who is distressed in life. Artharthi means one who needs money. Artho, Arthat, Jitnasu, inquisitive. And Jnani, one who is seeking of knowledge. So all these 4 kind of people will come to spiritual path. So Artha is the distressed. Somebody is suffering from material body. Is having some disease. And actually, if you read Bhagavad Gita, I'm thinking that if it is cured, there is nothing wrong in that actually. No, he is somehow coming to the reading Bhagavad Gita. See, whatever you read, we have seen it earlier. No, the holy names of the Lord or any spiritual process is always potent. Whether you do it knowingly or unknowingly, the result is always there. So, but generally, a person who is advanced, he will not do this any spiritual activity for a material perspective. So, the curing the body is also technically material, but at the same time, there is a saying, no, without a wall we cannot draw a picture, right? So a healthy body is very much necessary for actually practicing devotion service also. So we cannot neglect the body, and then just think that okay, everything will be okay without doing anything is also not true. So basically there is no correct answer for this question, right? Based on each devotee's level and perspective, he can decide what is right and wrong. There is, so in simple answer, actually there is nothing wrong in reading Bhagavad Gita thinking that no, if this is good, that is generally scriptures, there is no wrong. But first I'm not sure whether Bhagavad Gita, there is a scriptural reference saying that you can read Bhagavad Gita for a particular, like this you mentioned. I'm not sure if it is scripturally mentioned, then I think it may be true. You want to add something?
Hare Krishna.
Okay, sure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. So, in the beginning stage, actually, people, in order to people to get attracted with Krishna, so the devotees give like this kind of suggestion. But we should not think that okay, at least now we are also attending few classes, so we should do that. No, the Lord also said that whatever we do, we should do it for the pleasure of the Lord. We do some services, we do some fasting, we do some Ekadashi. Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita 9 chapter, Yat karoshi itnyasi, juhoshi dadasya. You offer to me whatever the results. And if we can make the Lord happy, then the Lord will take care of all these parts. So we don't need to particularly concentrate on okay, this I am doing for the health only. So then the health only will be covered. So actually Bhagavad Gita teaches us about how to attain to the ultimate abode of the Lord, how to attain Krishna Prema. So if you are concentrating only on the health part, then that only will be covered. Of course, the Lord can cure everything, all the diseases of all the living entities. So, but if you are thinking about the ultimate benefit, then all these things also will be automatically done. So basically, we should not think about okay, I'm doing this for my health issues. So yeah, so we should not limit Bhagavad Gita to such a limited scope. That fine,
Yeah.
Prabhu?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Yeah.
Okay,
It's,
okay.
good answer. Thank you.
Okay,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhu. So basically, Prabhuji, so as we have explained, so if let's say for example you personally have a problem, or somebody in your family has a problem, and actually scripture says that you can read Bhagavad Gita, there is no wrong actually, you can read it. No, you should read actually. So somehow or other reading Bhagavad Gita, that is definitely good. But understanding of an advanced devotee, he thinks in it. So basically, see, let's say somebody's having a serious issue. Let's say somebody's having a terminal disease. He's having cancer, for example. And such a person, he will not be able to practice devotional service because he's extremely distressed, right? For him, if he thinks that okay, reading Bhagavad Gita is good for me, for and understanding the thing that if he does it, there's no harm actually. So it depends on what is the level of the person who is doing. In principle, devotional service is not meant for material gains, but if anybody doing any devotional activity is always benefited. So Krishna says that rather than worshipping some other devotee, right? Because they may say that okay, if I have this problem, I can worship, let's say Hanuman Chalisa I will sing, or I will, let's say, I can worship Shani Bhagavan. This I am having this particular problem. So rather than worshipping any other demigod, it is always better to worship Krishna, because Krishna actually, there's a shloka, no, we said Moshagama. What is it? Yeah, Akama Sakam. Yes, basically there's a shloka in Bhagavatam which says that Bhagavatam Akama Sarvakama va Moksha Kama Udakriti Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajade Purusha Puman. What it says is that what is it again? Akama Sarvakama. So if somebody, Akama means, see, there are different kind of people who worship gods or demigods. So Akama means without any desire. Sarvakama means full of desires. Right? Mokshakama, desire of liberation. So whatever be the reason, it is always better to worship the Supreme Lord than worshipping some other demigods. Because when you worship Supreme Lord, you get the ultimate benefit. When you worship the demigod, you get only that benefit. So somebody worship a particular demigod and he gets cured from the disease. But what is the use actually? Again, you will chart from ABCD next life, right? Or I become a worm or a dog or a cat. So, so basically, this question doesn't have one single answer. The answer will depend on the practitioner, what stage he is having actually. So, so it depends on whom you are asking for. For example, you are asking for yourself, then actually you already have some understanding of devotional service, right? And let's say you are having some physical problem or health problem because which is too much bothering you, are not able to make progress. You can of course always pray to the Lord, Supreme Lord, oh Lord, no, I am not able to serve you properly because of this problem. This is affecting me too much. You can pray to that Lord in that way. I want to get this cured so that I can serve you better. If that is the mood, then there is nothing wrong. But that should not be the final goal actually. I have a disease, my disease should be cured, and then after that I'll leave my devotional service. That should not be. So that is so it's not a simple answer, Prabhu. So, but in principle, I think hopefully that clarifies the overall thing, right?
Yeah, Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So any other questions are there? Otherwise, we will talk about Balram. Tomorrow is Balram Purnima. So any other questions anybody is having? Chetan Kumar?
Prabhuji, if I forget Krishna, Prabhuji, what will happen?
Krishna will remember you.
So how Prabhuji, like?
Krishna can do anything. No? He has created the entire universe, right? He has given us the memory. See, if Krishna can give you remembrance and forgetfulness, what is the difficulty for Krishna to remember you? He can do everything. We should never underestimate the Lord, Supreme Lord, right? Who is the creator of everything. So it is told that many acharyas have told this question, because, and Lord Krishna also has replied to this, saying that no, acharyas asked the Lord, actually now I am very happy, no, I am very healthy, and I am able to serve you, chant your names nicely. But I don't know when I become old whether I'll be able to chant your name, because no, at the time of death, the pain and distress is so much, the throat is choked with mucus. No, I am not able to remember you at that time. So what will happen to me? Krishna will say, no, if you have served me all your life, how is it possible that I can forget you? So basically, Krishna, see, Prabhuji, we have to understand that there are rules and regulations or laws which are given for general understanding. But the Lord is above all the laws and regulations. This for the normal understanding of the people. We have told, no, life is an exam. Life is a preparation exam. This is a general law. But actually, Krishna can always pass you, because let's say he is the what you call chancellor of the university. He can just give you grace mark, right, if you want. So the Lord is not bound by any of these laws, which actually we are understanding these laws are there. He is not under the control of any of the laws. So Krishna, in this particular case, many devotees have asked the Lord. Lord so says that if you have practiced devotional service all your life, how can I forget you at the time of death? If you are not able to remember me, I will definitely remember you. That's way the Lord has assured. This is one answer. Second answer is that what is remembrance and forgetfulness, right? Is actually not everything is perceived by us. We may see that a person is in coma, okay, but actually only that person really knows what actually is his perception at the time. We have discussed about example of out of body experience, near death out of body experience, right? Many people have out of body experience when they are operated. Actually, even though they are under anesthesia and then they don't have any kind of consciousness, after coming back from the operation, they are able to tell what has happened. So that is mean that the body is just an equipment. It's just a machine, like just like a machine to interact with the material world. But actually, there is subtle body, which is mind, intelligence, ego. It also has the senses and perception. So even though with the brain or with the gross body you are not able to remember the Lord, how do we know whether that person is able to still remember the Lord in a subtle body? We cannot know, right? So these things are all beyond our understanding. Actually, we cannot completely understand it. But nevertheless, in both the ways, we don't have to worry, because anyway, in the physical sense, if you are not able to remember, the Lord will remember you. And otherwise, that person still may be remembering. Only thing, you may be thinking that he's in coma or he's unconscious for 10 days, but he still have the perception. We don't know actually. Externally, he may not be able to know. or we are not able to see his perceptions, but he may still have the perceptions. So all these things are not in our control, Prabhu. But nevertheless, Krishna has repeatedly said that Kaundeha pratijanihi name bhakta pranashari. He says that, O Arjuna, O Kaundeya, declare boldly that my devotee never perishes. So whoever has taken devotional service, he will never face with misfortune. That misfortune is not easy for us to understand, because when we say misfortune, we think from our material perspective. So we see that, okay, some devotee died in an accident. We say, oh, he's the most unfortunate person. What a bad death he is having. This is only our understanding. But what exactly that devotee went undergo, nobody knows actually. Sometimes an accident may be, maybe a very easy way to die. Ultimately, the Lord actually is there within every living entity. The Lord is as Paramatma, right? And Lord actually, by the Paramatma only we are able to perceive things. So by our mundane vision, we cannot understand everything. Apparently, it may look that no, somebody may suffer or somebody may be enjoying, but what actually is going through for that person, we cannot estimate actually by our limited understanding. So that's what I want to say. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu, but my question is like, how means will Krishna will come somehow will come and tell us or something like he'll give some hint or something like Prabhuji or just forgotten me or something like that.
See, that's what again. It is not, as I told you, it's not exactly a physical kind of rule. That so even if that devotee apparently doesn't remember the Lord, if Lord is remembering, oh, this devotee, is now about to pass from this material world. He has done so much of devotional service. I'll take him to Vaikuntha. I mean, if you think like that is enough, now he doesn't have to remember at all. It is not that the rule has to be always passed. The Lord has to come and make you remember. It is not necessary for the Lord to that to happen. So it depends on how much elevation you have achieved in devotional life, and how much the Lord actually, how much you are dear to the Lord. The Lord actually can do anything, whatever He likes.
Okay, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes. So any other questions? Otherwise, we'll talk about Balram. Okay. If any other questions, no, we can ask in the end. Actually, so we'll talk sometime, a few minutes about Lord Balramji. Hare Krishna.
Hey Krishna. Okay.